one of the questions regarding the book of Ecclesiastes is kind of similar to a question we asked in the book of Job. Does Ecclesiastes affirm the concept of afterlife? Chapter 3:11 in some versions would seem to suggest so. He has made everything beautiful in his time. He has also set eternity in the hearts of men. And this could mean that they have a longing for eternity, a longing for heaven in their hearts. On the other hand, the New Revised Standard Version gives a rather different interpretation. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he has put a sense of past and future into their minds. And that would have nothing necessarily to do with eternity in the sense of heaven. Some verses appear to express doubts about the afterlife, or at least agnosticism. 3:21, who knows that the breath of man ascends upward, and the breath of the beast ascends downward to the earth? It's as if he doesn't say yes, he doesn't say no, he just says, who knows? And if you look at life under the sun, that is, look at life apart from God, there is no way of knowing. Or chapter 6 and verse 12, who knows what is good for a man during his lifetime, during the few years of his futile life? He will spin them like a shadow, for who can tell a man what will be after him under the sun? And that after him might be the question also of afterlife. Who can say? The writer of Ecclesiastes, speaking from the human-only perspective, the under-the-sun perspective, cannot affirm an afterlife. All he can say is, who knows? And apart from revelation from God, we would have no way of knowing. Well, the second half of the book, with that cheery title, Death is Better Than Life, begins to grope towards an answer to the vanity of life. He makes the statement in chapter 7 that a good funeral is better than a good party. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting. For death is the destiny of every man. The living should take this to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. A funeral is better than a party because it makes people think more. He does conclude that wisdom is better than folly, yet is not always rewarded. It is better to heed a wise man's rebuke than to listen to the song of fools, chapter 7 and verse 5. And yet righteousness and wisdom don't always pay out. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these things, a righteous man perishing in his righteousness, and a wicked man living long in his wickedness. Do not be overly righteous, do not be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be overly wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? He does give some advice in the direction of wisdom, that you should enjoy life, but remember that God will judge us. Be happy, young man, while you are young, and let your heart give you joy in all the days of your youth. Follow the ways of your heart and whatever your eyes see, but know that for all these things God will bring you to judgment. He advises that people remember God in their youth while they still can. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years approach when you will say, I can find no pleasure in them. And then he describes old age. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark, and the clouds return after the rain, and those looking through windows grow dim, that is, before your eyes get to where you can't see anymore. when the keepers of the house tremble and strong men stoop, once mighty athletes become crickety old men. When the grinders cease because they are few, the teeth are gone. And when the doors of the street are closed and the sound of the grinding fades, when men rise up at the sound of birds, but all their songs grow faint. In other words, you can't hear anymore the things that you used to hear. When men are afraid of heights and dangers in the street, as you get old, you have more fears along these lines. Remember God when you're young, before all these things come upon you. Well, then we arrive at the conclusion that the narrator gives us. Not only was Kohelet wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. Kohelet searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. Of the making of many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. I used to think of that as my life verse. Now all has been heard. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commands. That's the bottom line message. For this is the whole duty of man, for God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So, what is the value and the message of this book of Ecclesiastes? Number one, the book of Ecclesiastes is an apologetic for non-Christians. Kohelet rightly discerns that life, if understood apart from God, is meaningless. Without God being central in one's life, life is meaningless. And that realization can be a first step in a non-Christian's thinking to their becoming a Christian. If they conclude that their worldview results in life being meaningless, well, then we can offer them the Christian worldview, which makes life meaningful. And thus Ecclesiastes ultimately points to Christ, who is the source of all meaning. And that goes to our second point. Meaning to life is found in God. Kohelet captures the despair of many in the modern world. But it also, especially in the conclusion of the book, points to the answer to that despair. You want to find meaning to life? Fear God and keep his commandments. That will make life meaningful. The book also has a message for you and me who are Christians. Even we are in danger of substituting other things for God, making our work our God, making pleasure our God, or knowledge, or sexual pleasure, or anything else, living for that more than we live for God. And we will find that if we do that, we will have a far less meaningful life. Though if we make God first in our lives, then work and pleasure and knowledge and marriage and all those other things can be a part of that meaningful experience with God at the center. Even Christians sometimes get caught up in the world and miss God's real blessings. Well, that's our introduction to the book of Ecclesiastes.